You're listening to a bonus episode of The Dairy Age, featuring Teagasc's weekly Let's Talk Dairy webinar series, which is also available as a podcast.
Good morning, everybody, and you're welcome to today's Let's Talk Dairy webinar. Next, guys and girls, we're going to move over and have a chat with Aidan Lawless. Aidan is the Dairy Unit Manager at Johnstown Castle. Johnstown Castle has a herd of 140 cows, of whom 90 are winter calving cows. Now, while calving is well underway in the spring cohort of the cows, we're going to focus on the 90 strong autumn calving unit, because this unit is well in milk production. It's been managed as a separate unit at Johnstown Castle. So Aidan, you're very welcome to the Let's Talk Dairy podcast.
Thanks very much, George. Yeah.
Aidan, tell us a bit about the herd. We'll start off maybe with when did the herd calve, and gives a profile of the kind of cows you have.
Yeah, so the herd would start calving, target calving date of around the 22nd of September. So they start calving anytime from the 15th, 16th of September. And a 10-week calving block, we aim for 2 10-week calving blocks, very distinct calving blocks. So they'll finish up, I think our last cow calved the 28th or 29th of November. So you could get them creeping into December for 1 or 2 cows for a week. But we're pretty compact again, sort of. So most of them, I suppose the first sort of 75-80% will be calved within the first 3 to 4 weeks. And then the rest, the other 20% will drag out there until the end of November. Yeah.
EBI, they've a strong EBI, I think, Aidan, haven't they?
Yeah, so the overall herd EBI is about 200, and that's pretty well balanced for milk and fertility. So I think the milk's kgs predicted milk is about 130, and the figure for milk is about 70 or 80, I think, and the fertility about 90 or something, and then the calving is making up about 35 in the health on top of that. So another important thing is, like, we don't like the type of bull, the type of sire that we're selecting for the autumn herd is the same sire that we're going to select for the spring herd coming when we start selecting the sires for the spring there in the next few weeks. We're targeting fertility over 100, 120 for fertility, for a fertile bull that's going to give us high milk solids, and a lot of that solids is coming from high percentages really, rather than huge volume. And that's what we would have seen back, I suppose, with the autumn herd for the last few years. We're pretty well contracted, but even at that, like, we're getting our bonus for our premium on milk is coming from the A plus B minus C, so the milk solids. We're getting about 7 or 8 cents a litre on that over the year, and I think most co-ops now are paying A plus B minus C, even winter milk contracted ones. So.
And they're not a particularly big cow either. I was down there with you last month. I thought they'd be a stronger cow, a larger cow. They're nice. I won't say handy sized, but they're not a big cow, they're not.
It depends where you're coming from, George, I suppose, but we would have some groups coming in and they'd be said they're a handy type of cow, and then we have more groups coming in saying they're a big cow, but they're the cow we have, and they're sort of doing the business for us, and I suppose we don't pick on size, but that's what we've been bred for the last 2 years. That's what we've ended up with. So yeah, I think the maintenance index is somewhere around 8 or 9 or something. It's coming in a figure that the cow should be around 600 kilos, and that's what they are when we're weighing here for research purposes and all. So mid lactation, that cow with 20% first calvers in the herd is coming in around that 600 kilo cow. So a nice strong type cow. Yeah.
I suppose we'll move on then, Aidan, to the real focus of our chat here this morning. You've 35 hectares for 90 cows. That's the kind of what we call the milking platform for this group of cows. So it's a good tight stocking rate. They're all calved and in milk, so demand is high. How do you manage? We listened to John talking about people running ahead of themselves. How are you managing to keep the cows on track from a grazing perspective across this spring?
Yeah, so the demand is high. Like we depending on the trials that are going on, we've ran stocking rates anywhere ranging from 2.5 cows to 4 cows per hectare on the different treatments over the last 10 or 15 years, really. But at the moment, we've sort of a sort of grazing platform stock demand of 3.2, 3.25 livestock units per hectare, and then we're bringing in say forage maize, which will equate to an overall farm stocking rate about 2.4, 2.5 for the. Yeah, for the same management purposes. So we've potential demand of over 60 kilos a day, I suppose, at turnout from the first day. And we turned out the 30th of January there this year. That's our target date, is normally the first of February around then. We have gone a week earlier times. We couldn't this year because we were on a methane emissions trial. But but it's important to, I think it's key, and we would have had some people coming in before saying, "Oh, I've huge demand. I'll have to wait for. I wouldn't have enough grass." But so we are turning out. But like we've been even with the exceptional weather, and we've had exceptional weather really here for February. I've never seen it as good really. Like so we can do whatever we like, but we're still only grazing by day with the autumn herd, getting somewhere between 5 and 7 kilos of grass into them. And that's amounting to around 20 or 25 kilos of demand per hectare still. Like so we're losing significant. John was talking about it earlier, maybe 10 kilos a day. We're probably losing 10 or 15. We carried very high covers, higher than normal over the winter, and we had some heavy covers that actually lost a couple of hundred kilos of grass. That we had covers of 1900 where we wouldn't have really liked, but that's what we ended up with last. If you remember back, October's exceptional growth in October there, and weather got wet with us, and we didn't want to fight with it with the autumn herd. We were happy enough that we'd take out grass very easily in the spring. So. And once you get your allowances right indoors, the autumn herd will clean out even heavy covers this time of the year once conditions are good. So I suppose the way we've managed it for the spring so far, we started off with reasonable covers of maybe 11,000 to 1,200 maybe on some of the drier area for the first field. And then we actually, because conditions were good, we actually went to some of the wetter area that wouldn't have had the huge heavier covers. And now we're gone into some of that 1900 at the moment on some of the drier ground. So we're just, I suppose, like John was saying earlier, we sort of played what was in front of us. So and when the conditions allowed to get, we didn't know the weather was going to stay good, so we grazed some of the wetter ground earlier.
Is it worth going out for 5 to 7 kilos of grass a day? You're not better to bundle up to 10 or 12 kilos and go maybe 3 days a week, or hold them in a week or two longer.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. We wouldn't, and like I said, we wouldn't go out for any less than 5 kilos of grass. And we had it. You could potentially have that, say, at a stocking rate when we ran a stocking rate of 4 or 4.5 cows per hectare. There, back a few years, and what we did is exactly what you said. We went out 3 or 4 days a week, and we stayed in the other 3 days, and no problem with that. But like, it's definitely worth going out for like 4, 5, 7 kilos. Cows are going out with an appetite. We're aiming that they've sort of the silage cleared from really sort of after midnight, sometime 2 or 3 o'clock. They're getting 3 kilos of nuts in the parlour. They're going out. They have an appetite. They'll graze. But when the conditions are as good as they are at the moment, what I found over the last week or two is they're going out. Even they're not mad hungry, but they're going out, and they're probably not grazing out fully in their first grazing bout. But then they get up around sort of 12, 1 o'clock in the day, and before we normally bring them in around 3 o'clock. But they'll actually clean off the paddock there before they come in. Now, if conditions were a little dodgier, we'd probably cut back the area a little bit, or make them a little hungrier going out, that they just go out and graze that for that 3 hour block, and we bring them back in. But the real benefit of getting out now is sort of in April, when we have ideally hoping that we'll have grass to sort of feed the herd on good quality grass with no white butt. That grass is, once we hit the second round, we're sort of freewheeling with the autumn herd generally anyway. So they're just sort of grass only with maybe a couple of kilos of concentrate without any supplementation. But we will be with that sort of demand, and any farmer with that sort of demand with a high proportion of autumn cows will be supplementing for most of March. Generally maybe in by night and out by day, you know.
Yeah, if and that'll be your plan here too, Aidan, will it, for this?
It will. Now we have the grass budget. Like we probably, if things go right, we probably will get a second grazing bout for a week or 10 days in sometime around after Patrick's Day, maybe, to keep on target or grazing proportions. Like should say normally our target is very exactly what John was saying earlier, sort of that a third by the end of February and 2/3 by Patrick's Day, and then finish the first round sometime the first week of April. But again, we play what's in front of us, so things can change there. But we're running ahead at the moment. We probably actually have just about a third grazed at the moment, so we'll probably be up pushing closer to maybe 40% by the end of February. Now we have some heavier covers coming for over the next week or so that'll slow us down a little bit still, even with that 5 or 7 kilos in terms of percentages. But when conditions are so good, I'm not worried. And with the winter, especially with the winter ones, spring ones, I know we're not talking about them today, but they're I've always said, sort of the winter ones, we're sort of driving with the handbrake on at the moment, really, whereas with our spring ones at the moment, it's foot to the floor. We carried heavy covers over on with spring ones as well, and we just sort of getting as much grass as possible into them out full time.
Yeah. So different cohort of cows altogether. Just to get back to the winter side of the house there, Aidan, just for the people that have joined us late, and we're focusing on this farm with Aidan Lawless, the dairy herd manager. on the winter calving section. Aidan, what's the farm cover at the moment? The average farm cover on the winter block?
Yeah, so on the winter block at the moment, the average farm cover is around 920 to 940 per hectare. So it's pretty good. Like I said, we started off with we had covers of almost 1100, which was sort of unheard of maybe with the autumn, but we'd normally start closing up October, but we'd normally maybe coming in with a cover maybe 900 something, where we started with a higher cover. We've got a good bit of grazing done, and again, we're sort of on target, maybe more what John was talking about a bit as well. We wouldn't like the covers to go below 550, I suppose, sort of, especially on the autumn ones there at any stage. So we'll monitor that, but like we'd be sticking pretty much to the percentages grazed as well. I noticed, like I said, we've had exceptional February growth rates. Probably the recovery has been good. Like there's actually anything that's grazed, there's nice green colour to it. I wouldn't say there's massive volume of grass on it, but you wouldn't expect a massive volume of grass in February anyway, even with exceptional, like we'd only 8 mil of rain for the month of February so far, and our soil temperatures for the last week or 10 days about 8.9, which is running about 3 or 4 degrees higher than normal. But like I said, it's just solar radiation and the daylight hours. You're just not going to see massive growth in February, regardless of what sort of weather you get. But like I said, we couldn't, if we had every February as good as this, you couldn't ask for more. Conditions excellent.
Aidan, what have you gone out with then, or have you spread slurry nitrogen, or what's the story? Where are you at now with that?
Yeah, so we've everything has got fertilizer, I suppose, sort of. So and probably a more higher proportion than normal. Maybe we've got about 40% of the area has got slurry, because we were able to, anything that we grazed where we hadn't spread fertilizer on, we were able to follow up with slurry as well. And then we would target sort of from the end of January, or sort of 25th of January on, if conditions are good, we'd normally target the last third of ground out at the lighter covers. So all that went on with the less equipment, the low emission slurry spreading. So some dirty water gone on as well. And then the fertilizer only went on there Monday, the 30 kilos of N protected urea on anything that hadn't got slurry yet.
At the beginning of the week there.
Yeah,
even the real heavy covers, the 19s that you're going into the next week, they all got spread.
Everything has got, yeah. So look, that's there for, it's in the bank for like when they're grazed in the next week or two. So it's ready to go now. So yeah, we'd prefer to be getting something at this stage now. It probably needs it, like that 1900 has used up nitrogen at some stage to grow that anyway. So yeah.
The question then the people will ask is about the diet. So the diet is 5 to 7 kilos of grass, dry matter.
Yeah.
What else are you giving the cow, or the autumn calving group?
So the autumn calving group are continuing. We generally we don't change the diet when they go out, because it can be disruptive indoors or outdoors. So what we'll do is we'll just change the percentage really. Like, so we're on about 60 to 70%. So rather than say if there's 2,000 of silage going into diet, there'll be only 1,300 going in if we're on 70%. But so effectively per cow at the moment we're on 5 to 7 kilos of grass, 5 kilos grass silage, 5 kilos maize silage. And then there's about 6 kilos fresh of we had been at 8 there when it went out first, was sort of with good conditions on, we pulled them back on the concentrate. So they're on 6 kilos fresh, about 5.5 kilos concentrate at the moment. And that's actually split between a higher 23% nut and then just the summer grazing sort of 14% nut as well. We have the option of 2 feeds going in here. So if the autumn ones do have to come in again, we might increase that higher, the 23% nut. That's just really to balance the low protein in the maize.
Well, at the moment, they're getting about 3 kilos of each, Aidan, are they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's coming in an overall protein in the diet somewhere. Mike, I should say, Mike Deneen is sort of overseeing the research here at the moment, based in Moore Park, and it's coming in over about 16%. And then Neil Maher here is working away there, and he did a good bit of work on the methane emissions there on the autumn herd over the winter as well. So yeah.
So the diet, like there wouldn't be a massive, and I've seen this for a few years now at Johnstown. There wouldn't be a massive protein content going into the cows at any point across the winter or even through the spring. Like 16% of total diet is low enough. But how is it panning out in terms of milk urea? And then maybe we'll talk about milk yield for a second.
Yeah, the milk ureas are running low enough at the moment. Like we wouldn't want them any lower. They're sort of for the last 3 to 4 weeks at about between 14 to 16 on the bulk tank. So that's on the low side really, but we're happy enough. Indoors, they were even running around 20 when they were in full time on the diet. They were running with the 23% nut full nut. They were running somewhere around 20, 22. We're our target for last number of years, even when Joe was working on it there for the last 5 or 6 years, would have been pulling back the protein a little bit, sort of, and maybe between that and the type of cow, we've probably held better condition on the cows. They haven't peaked massively, but they have a sort of flatter curve, reasonably good condition. We've been getting reasonably very good fertility, I suppose, with a 10-week breeding period. We'd normally be running at less than 10% after the 10 weeks. Yeah. And then they'll just, like I said, they'll freewheel away. You'll find our autumn cows won't be that far behind the spring cows, even when they hit May, June, or when they're that peak milk period. They're still probably doing 24, 25 litres at high enough solids. So.
And you told our audience here they're actually yielding 29 litres at the moment, isn't that right?
Yeah, about 29 at the moment at 468 butterfat and 360 protein. So the percentages are good enough still. We would have been around between 345, 350 protein during the winter. Hopefully, last year we ran about 440 butterfat and 370 protein. I think for the year came in about we had very good milk solids last year, about 650, 660, probably delivered 630 or something. So of milk solids, but that'd be off
from the winter milk cohort.
Yeah, but that's off of a high level of concentrate as well. Like it was last year, came in about 1.7 tons of concentrate. Our target will be about 1.4. We're probably better on target at the moment for this year, but there was between the drought last year and stuff and poor enough conditions there in February last year as well. We didn't get to pull the concentrate as much as we would have liked, but
there's probably a bit of imported maize in that as well, or brought in maize in that as well.
Oh yeah, well, like the maize is 50% of the diet there for the winter period, so there's probably 0.6, 0.7 of a ton of maize per cow anyway, at least. Yeah. Okay,
very good. Yeah. And what are the plans then, Aidan? So you're going to graze about 40% the way you're going in February, and it'll be supplemented. We've supplemented through the month of March then with silage again, because of your high stocking rate and high demand. What will be the meal target for March and then going into April?
Well, we'll once they'll be on. We'll hold them on probably no less than 5 kilos if they're getting silage and maize indoors. Our silage isn't as good as we would have liked during the winter. The cows have performed reasonably well, but it's only coming in around 73 DMD. We'd be targeting over 75 DMD. Maize is good quality enough. We had that 50-50 split. So we're probably looking at 5 kilos per head per day during the month of March, but dropping back down to when, like I said, when it meets demand, and that'll happen quick enough there in April, and we'll probably come back down to a couple of kilos. And sometimes, depending on what's happening with the trial work and stuff, they'll either come off concentrate fully there in June, July before they're dried off, or they'll stay on the 2 kilos. It's not a huge. It could be sort of 60 or 100 kilos in the overall context. It's not a huge amount. It might just carry some minerals and calmette.
The heavy meal feeding is behind you now at this stage. Do you know what I mean? You've a ton fed more, you know?
Hopefully, anyway. Yeah, and look, there's we would have seen there's a return. They're still giving a good response to it. So I mean, even when you look at the figures, generally for the winter herds, we would find sort of that probably the meal feeding might pay for itself in one thing, but like there's other costs associated with winter milk in terms of higher capital investment, your infrastructure, and then your labour. And obviously, you're familiar with enough the work that sort of the split calving is really adding to the labour hours as well. So like we're 100% autumn herd. If we didn't have the spring herd, things would be very easy for the summer here, I suppose, as well. So
in the last area I wanted to talk to you about was about the breeding season. So breeding is pretty much over now. I think it's over the end of this week for the winter calving herd. How did it go, and what kind of bulls did you use, or what was the breeding plan there?
Yeah, so look, the breeding. Well, like I said, I'll tell you in 3 or 4 weeks' time how the breeding went. But look, it went well enough. Probably maybe back a little bit in terms of conception to first service. I don't know. We haven't scanned yet really, but just looking on return rates and all, we've had some cows quieting down a good bit in the last couple of weeks. All right, for the last 3 weeks, so. We'll be hoping that sort of we'll be still on that sort of target of less than 10% empty, and probably a lot of that's 70% or more calving in the first sort of 3 or 4 weeks. The heifers went very well as well, and there was very few returns on the heifers as well. Sort of types of bulls we're using is exactly what I was sort of describing there earlier. I can't give you a lot of genomic bulls, and I can't give you the actual bulls, but like the basis is sort of that sort of, we're generally looking at maybe they're probably 100 to 150 kilos for milk. They're percentage-wise, we're looking at sort of 0.2, maybe butterfat 0.15 or 0.2 protein, sort of generally looking for 35 kilos of milk solids in the bull, really, and over 120 for fertility. And when you put those two criteria in, even ICBF, and your list gets smaller, and then just conscious of sort of trying to keep a bit of a spread. Like there would have been a lot of one bull there, sort of, we know, sort of up on the top of the list, sort of, and sort of sires and sons of he's there. So we're just trying to keep a little bit of a spread on that, like, as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then
if our audience has any quick questions there for Aidan before we wrap it, just pop them into the chat function there, and we'll see how we get on. So Aidan, you didn't use any sex this year or anything? You didn't?
No, we didn't. We haven't used sex yet. We I suppose because we're on that very tight 10-week calving block with 2 splits, and up until the last few years, I suppose our fertility wouldn't, it was only okay, really, I suppose, with maybe indoors and everything. But we're just conscious. We didn't want to sort of make sure that there was no compromise in terms of the fertility. The other thing was, especially with the autumn herd, there probably is a little bit more of a demand for Frisian bulls in the autumn than there would be in the spring. And like I was saying to you earlier, I think most farmers now aren't using sex to generate heifers. They're using sex to not generate bulls. So, and we'd be similar in that, and we probably will use it there maybe going forward. Maybe in the spring even we might use some sext. But we're happy enough. We have a very pretty uniform herd. So even our poor cows are still sort of 120, 130 EBI cows that you'd be happy enough to breed off of. We've probably maybe about 10 to 15% of the herd that we'll just use dairy beef from day one. But even using that, we're still generating all our heifers in the first. We actually, for the last couple of years, we've been generating too many heifers, which are a cost in the system if you're not getting rid of them early enough. So we've generated enough heifers that we have that sort of calved in the first 3 or 4 weeks. And even when I mention in labour again, that's a huge benefit if you can just have all the calves. Like, so our autumn calves are one block and our spring calves are one block. And even at that, you still have 3 or 4 different groups of heifers. But like if you have smaller different groups, it's very, very difficult to manage. So the heifers are all calved in the first, I suppose, 4 or 5 weeks, all reared as sort of one group after weaning, and sort of they're good block then to come in for breeding.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've no more questions, I'm going to wrap it here at that for Aidan. Aidan claims he's a Wexford man, but we all know that he cut his teeth in Salahead in County Tipperary. So he might be doing a good job in Johnstown, but he learned it somewhere else. Remember that now. He didn't learn in Wexford. All right, Aidan.
Yeah, but I've converted one to Wexford now at this stage, George. So
listen, thanks very much, Aidan, for a very informative chat about the situation on the Wintermeg side in Johnstown Castle. And we'll be back again with another episode of our Let's Talk Dairy series next week at the same time.
That's all for this week's bonus episode from the Let's Talk Dairy webinar series, and don't forget to look out for more bonus episodes each week. I'll be back with the usual Dairy Edge podcast on Monday, so do listen in then. I'm Stuart Childs, and thanks for listening.